and one of them is CPE for chemical potential energy. So ATP, adenosine triphosphate, that's what ATP stands for, is the universal energy currency. It's like money. So if you think about these metabolic processes, they can't just occur unless you provide their energy or their energy money. Okay? So that's where ATP comes in, why it's the universal energy currency. Every living organism that we know of, now if some aliens come from outer space, they may use something else, but everything that we know of uses chemical potential energy in ATP to run the cell's metabolism. So, oh, and someone asked, well, do viruses need ATP? Yes, to make new viruses, to make their RNA or their DNA or their protein coats or their few enzymes. Yes, they do. But they use the cell's energy because they are the worst house guest ever. They show up with nothing. Nothing. And they use all of what the cell has. Okay? Well, barely nothing. They show up with their RNA or their DNA and maybe an enzyme like reverse transcriptase for the AIDS virus. All right. So what happens is ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate, when another phosphate, a free phosphate group is added to it, and energy in between the bond of the second and third phosphate groups, so the second one and then the added third, that forms ATP. This is a reversible reaction. Someone asked, are there any non-reversible reactions? And yes, there are. And with a quick look online, I found that when there's a fire and it burns up, let's say, trees, because some of the materials go up into the air and spread out and all this, those can be irreversible reactions because you don't have the materials to remake the tree again, for example. It's not, I mean, that's oversimplifying it, but this is definitely a reversible reaction. And in fact, what happens? When your cell needs some energy, the third phosphate group popped off, the energy is released, the free energy, and the cell can do what it needs to do. Or that piece of the cell can do what it needs to do. So, seriously, ATP is like money. It's what gets things done in a cell. But, think about it. That energy is used, so it's not available here, but there's other energy. We'll talk about that. There are these free phosphate groups, and there's ADP left over. So, with cellular respiration or fermentation, boom, we take chemical potential energy from somewhere else, add it to the ADP plus the P sub I that it exists, and get more ATP. Your cells are a little different than your bank accounts. You always have to have a balance of ATP. You cannot have a negative balance of ATP. If you do, the cell can't do what it needs to do. So you can't overdraw your ATP account in your cells. That's why when you overdo, your muscles, even though they can't get enough oxygen to go through cellular respiration and get you 30-something ATPs, they then do the next best thing and go into fermentation and get you 2 net ATPs to use. So that, you cannot go into a negative with ATP. When blood flow stops, Cells don't get oxygen. When they don't get oxygen, they can't make ATP and they die. So think about how long it takes for a person to not have blood flow for, them to occur, for brain death to occur. Brain death occurs because there's not enough oxygen to make ATP, to make enough ATP to fuel those brain cells, those nervous system cells. Now, ATP, and it's in the notes too, it looks like this. There's the first, second, and third phosphate group. There's energy stored here, energy stored here. This is the adenosine molecule, and you can see in your notes what it really looks like. I'm not interested in you drawing chemical structures. So, ATP, adenosine, 1, 2, 3, triphosphate. ADP, adenosine, 1, 2, diphosphate. Okay? So, again, this is the same thing that we have here. ADP plus the free phosphate plus the energy yields ATP. So that's when we're making it. When we need to use it, ATP breaks down into ADP, the free phosphate, and the energy that the cell uses to do its work. The last thing I want to show you on this board before I erase it is glucose. I'm going to write glucose as C6H12O6. So 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. And this is one of the ways you can diagram glucose. And why am I doing this? I'm doing this because between bonds, all of the bonds here, bonds between the oxygens and the hydrogens, and in fact you don't see all of the hydrogens. Well, let's see, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, no, somehow I messed up with my counting, but and please forgive me. But, no, there's 12 hydrogens, so you don't see all of them drawn here, but chemical potential energy in glucose. So, this, let's go back to the money analogy. Glucose is like a paycheck. You cannot directly use your paycheck. You put your paycheck in the bank or have it direct deposited. Then you have access to ATP. After you convert the chemical potential energy in the glucose to chemical potential energy in ATP. Okay, so I said, hey, free energy is added to ADP plus P sub I to get that third phosphate on there. That's where it comes from. Carbohydrates like glucose. And then if you don't have enough carbohydrates, let's say you're on that keto diet, you're going to burn fats. And if you go into a prolonged starvation, you're going to burn proteins. But that's not good because proteins are not stored. So if you are burning, when I say burning, using proteins to get ATP, you are starving. Okay, and I realize there's some thing about the keto diet and you want the ketones, that means you are burning some proteins, and that's fine, but you don't want to burn a whole bunch or you'll look like the emaciated people who are starving to death. And basically, eventually, they are giving up structure like muscle in the heart to be able to have energy for their cells, and at some point the structures are too badly damaged to continue to function. Okay, let me erase. In fact, let me ask my cameraman, how many minutes is that?
25.
Okay, in fact, let's stop, and this will be video 1.